The question hung in the air like smoke after a gun goes off. Congresswoman Omar, I'm just a simple country lawyer from Louisiana. But I have to ask you something. Senator John Kennedy leaned forward in his chair, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced, that slow Louisiana drawl stretching every syllable like taffy. The kind of voice that makes you lean in closer, even when you're already listening. And I want you to think real careful before you answer, because this whole room and about 10 million Americans watching at home are going to remember what you say next. The House Ethics Committee chamber was packed. 400 bodies crammed into a space meant for 300. Hot, tense. Every camera in Washington pointed at the witness table like rifles at a firing squad. Kennedy sat on the panel as a constitutional law expert invited to participate in the questioning. At the witness table, Representative Ilhan Omar adjusted her microphone, confident, composed, that trademark expression on her face, the one that says, "I've dealt with worse than you." Kennedy's eyes never left her. Did you steal from your own campaign? The room sucked in its collective breath. You could hear it, that sharp intake, like oxygen getting vacuumed out of a depressurizing plane. Someone in the back dropped something. The clatter echoed in the sudden silence. Omar's expression didn't change. Not yet. She was good at this. Years of practice. But Kennedy wasn't done. Folks, what you're about to hear is documented, provable, and absolutely infuriating. His voice rose slightly, warming up like an engine. 5 scandals, 5 rounds, each one worse than the last. And unlike the Congresswoman here, I'm going to stick to facts. He smiled, not a friendly smile, not even close. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse right before the pounce. A Louisiana smile, the kind that comes right before something terrible happens to someone who probably deserves it. Let's start with the money. He tapped the folder in front of him 3 times, slow, deliberate. Always start with the money. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. People leaned forward. This was it. This was what they came for. Kennedy opened the folder without looking down, keeping his eyes on Omar, watching her watch him. If you've been waiting for someone to finally ask her the questions nobody else will, hit that like button right now. Share this with everyone you know. Your friends need to see this. Omar's hands rested on the table in front of her, perfectly still. Too still. The kind of stillness that takes effort to maintain. Kennedy picked up a single piece of paper, held it up high enough for the cameras to catch it, but not close enough for them to read it. Now, let's begin. The paper looked old, worn at the edges, like it had been folded and unfolded many times. Kennedy held it between his thumb and forefinger, studying it like it was the most important document in American history. Congresswoman, this right here is from Betty. Betty Henderson, retired nurse from Duluth. He paused. Let the words settle. Let people picture Betty. Old, retired Duluth. She sent you 50. The pause stretched. 5 seconds. 10. In that silence, you could hear everything. Breathing. The hum of lights. Someone's stomach growling. Kennedy was in no rush. When you've got someone dead to rights, you don't sprint. You walk. You savor every step. $50 she could have spent on her grandkids, birthday presents, Christmas gifts, gas money so she could visit them more often. Another pause. You know what she got for that $50? This time he didn't wait for an answer because he knew he wouldn't get one. Omar sat motionless, staring at him with an expression that hadn't quite decided what it wanted to be yet. Defiant, dismissive, defensive, still calculating. She got to fund your husband's BMW. Kennedy set the paper down gently, carefully like it was made of glass. Then he leaned back in his chair and got comfortable. This was going to take a while. Let me explain how that works. Somewhere in the room, someone whispered something to someone else. Kennedy heard it. So did Omar. You could see it in the way her eyes flicked to the left for just a second before snapping back to Kennedy. Now, I don't mean any disrespect, Congresswoman. There it was, his signature phrase, the one that always came right before massive disrespect. But where I'm from, when someone gives you money in good faith, you're supposed to use it for what you said you'd use it for. His voice stayed level, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. Not to enrich your family, but maybe they do things differently in Minnesota. I don't know. I've never been to Minnesota. Too cold for my blood. A few nervous laughs rippled through the gallery. Kennedy's face remained serious. He wasn't joking. Not really. Omar's jaw tightened. Just a little, but enough. She leaned toward her microphone, and when she spoke, her voice had that edge to it, that tone she used when she was about to lecture someone about their privilege or their ignorance. Senator, all campaign expenditures were properly reported and disclosed according to Federal Election Commission guidelines, and Kennedy raised one hand. Not aggressive, not rude, just a hand. Stop. Oh, I'm sure they were reported. I'm sure you dotted every I and crossed every T on your FEC forms. He picked up another paper from the folder. Didn't look at it. Didn't need to. I'm talking about something different here. I'm talking about what's right, what's moral, what's decent. He finally looked at the paper. Betty Henderson, 68 years old, worked as a nurse for 40 years. 40? That's a long time to wipe noses and hold hands and tell scared people everything's going to be okay when you know it's probably not. The room had gone absolutely silent now. No more whispers, no more shuffling. Even the cameras stopped clicking for a moment. Everyone listening. Betty lives on Social Security now, $1,500 a month. That's it. That's what she's got. After 40 years of helping people, America gives her $1,500 a month. Barely enough to cover rent and groceries if she's careful. And she gave you 50 of those dollars. Kennedy's voice hadn't risen, hadn't gotten angry. That was the thing about Kennedy. He didn't need to yell. The words did the work themselves. Someone in the gallery coughed. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Betty believed in you, Congresswoman. She watched your speeches, probably on YouTube, since I doubt she's got cable. She thought you were fighting for people like her, the forgotten ones, the ones who worked their whole lives and got nothing to show for it but a check that barely covers the basics. He paused. So she sent you $50 in an envelope with a stamp, with a note inside. He picked up yet another paper. This one looked different, smaller, handwritten. He held it up so the cameras could see the shaky cursive, even if they couldn't read the words. You know what the note said. Omar's hands had moved just slightly from resting flat on the table to gripping its edge. White knuckles. Kennedy saw it. Everyone saw it. It said, "Please use this to fight for us." Kennedy's voice dropped to almost a whisper. 4 words. Please use this to fight for us. He set the note down and looked directly at Omar. His expression had changed. The slight amusement was gone. What replaced it was harder, colder, the expression of a man who'd seen something that genuinely disgusted him. You want to tell Betty how you fought for her? You want to explain how her $50 helped the working class? Omar's mouth opened. Kennedy's hand came up again. Not this time. Not yet. Actually, let me tell her, because, unlike you, Congresswoman, I've got the receipts. Literal receipts. He pulled out a stack of papers, maybe 20 sheets, maybe 30. Didn't matter. The point was made. Evidence, documentation, facts. Your campaign paid your husband's consulting firm. Not a little bit, not pocket change. $250,000. He let that number sit there. Breathe, grow. $250,000 from campaign donations from people like Betty. Your tax-deductible contributions at work. The gasp came from somewhere in the middle of the gallery. Actually audible, actual shock, from someone who maybe hadn't known the exact number until now. Other heads turned. Whispers started spreading like wildfire through dry grass. Now I'm just a simple country lawyer, but I did some checking. Kennedy flipped through the pages slowly, not reading them, just showing them as proof. Most consulting firms, they charge based on deliverables, actual work product, reports, strategy documents, meeting notes, something you can hold in your hand and say, here's what we paid for, and here's what we got. He looked up. That smile was back, the dangerous one. So, I asked your campaign office, what did we get for our $250,000? What did Betty's $50 buy? He paused, flipped another page. You know what? They told me. Omar shifted in her seat. Her aide sitting behind her looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Literally anywhere. Strategic communications advice. Kennedy's eyebrows went up. That's it. That's the whole answer. Strategic communications advice. He drew out each word like he was explaining them to a child. Not a report, not a strategy document, not even a PowerPoint presentation, just advice, verbal advice, advice that apparently costs the same as a house in most of America. Omar tried again. Her voice came out higher than before, faster. The first sign of defensive mode activating. Senator, this is completely within legal parameters. And the suggestion that, oh, I'm not done, Congresswoman. Kennedy wasn't raising his voice, wasn't being rude, but he was definitely not letting her finish. See, I kept digging because I'm curious like that. My mama always said I asked too many questions. She was probably right. A few genuine laughs this time. Kennedy had that gift. He could make you laugh even when you were angry. Maybe especially when you were angry. And I found something interesting. The payments to your husband's firm. They started right around the time you married him. What a coincidence. And they continued month after month. Thousands of dollars every single month from people like Betty to your husband for advice that nobody can quite explain. Kennedy stood up. The movement was deliberate, slow. He walked around the committee table toward the witness table. Not fast, not threatening, just walking like a man with nowhere to be and all day to get there. Omar's eyes followed him, tracked him like a security camera follows movement. I don't mean any disrespect. There was that phrase again. But Betty don't care about your FEC reports. Betty don't care about disclosure rules or legal parameters. Betty wants to know why her $50 bought your husband a car he didn't need with money she couldn't afford to give. He stopped walking right in front of the witness table, close enough to see Omar's breathing had picked up. Shallow, quick, the first real cracks appearing in that carefully maintained facade. Betty's in the gallery today. Row 3. Stand up, Betty. Everyone turned. Every head in the room, every camera. They found her immediately. Third row aisle seat. An elderly woman, small and thin, using the seat in front of her to pull herself up. 70 years old if she was a day. Shaking slightly, whether from age or emotion, or both, impossible to tell. But standing, present, real. The cameras found her and stayed there. 1,000 lenses focusing on one retired nurse from Duluth who'd sent $50 to someone she believed in. Kennedy's voice changed, softened, became the voice of a grandson talking to his grandmother. "Hi, Betty." She waved, a small, uncertain wave. The wave of someone who'd never been the center of attention in her entire life, and wasn't entirely sure how to handle it now. Kennedy turned back to Omar. The softness evaporated like water on hot asphalt. "You want to look her in the eye and explain your consulting arrangement?" Omar stared at her notes, at her hands, at the microphone in front of her, at the table, at anything and everything except Betty Henderson standing in row 3 with her hand still half raised in that uncertain wave. The silence stretched. 15 seconds, 20, 30. Long enough to become uncomfortable. Long enough to become damning. "That's what I thought." Kennedy walked back to his seat, took his time, sat down, adjusted his papers, let the moment breathe. "Betty, would you like to say anything to the Congresswoman?" The microphone wasn't anywhere near Betty. She was in the gallery. The witness table was 40 feet away. One of the committee staffers, a young guy, rushed over with a handheld mic. Betty's hands were shaking so badly when she took it that the microphone bobbled. The intern held it steady for her and whispered something encouraging. She nodded. When she spoke, her voice cracked halfway through. 70 years of Minnesota winters and Louisiana summers, and everything in between, packed into 4 words. "I trusted you." That's all she said. 4 words in a voice that barely made it past a whisper, but somehow carried through the entire silent room like thunder. Then again, louder, steadier, like she'd found something inside herself she didn't know was there. "I trusted you. I believed you. You said you'd fight for us, for people like me. And you just—" She couldn't finish. Words failed. She sat down hard. Someone next to her, another elderly woman, put an arm around her shoulders. The room didn't erupt so much as it collapsed into noise, into chaos. Angry muttering spreading like a virus. Not applause, not boos. Just the sound of 400 people all processing the same betrayal at the same time. The sound of realization hitting like a freight train. Kennedy let it build. Didn't try to quiet them. Didn't bang a gavel. Just sat there and let the anger spread until it had nowhere left to go. When he finally spoke again, his voice cut through the noise like a knife through butter. "Congresswoman Omar." The room went quiet instantly. "Under oath, did your husband's consulting firm receive approximately $250,000 from your campaign committee? Yes or no?" Omar's voice, when it came, was different now. Higher, faster. The defensive walls going up brick by brick. "As I've stated multiple times, all expenditures were properly disclosed according to federal guidelines, and the insinuation that—" "It's a simple question, ma'am." Kennedy's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. "Did his firm receive the money? Yes or no?" Silence. 5 seconds. 10. 15. "Yes?" One word, barely audible, but caught by every microphone in the room. "And you were married to him at the time these payments were made?" "Yes, but that doesn't—" "And can you provide this committee with specific deliverables, actual work product, anything tangible that justified $250,000 of donor money going to your family?" The silence stretched again. 20 seconds. 30. 40. Omar looked at her aide. He looked at his lap. No help there. She looked at her notes. They didn't have the answer either. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "I thought not." Kennedy gathered his papers, tapped them on the table to straighten them, took his time. "That's one scandal, folks. Betty's $50 at work. But wait, there's more. Oh, there is so much more. He opened another folder. Fresh evidence. New horrors. Let's talk about immigration. Do the people of Minnesota know about this? Omar's hands gripped the edge of the table. Knuckles white. Bone showing through skin. The confidence that had walked into this room was cracking now. Hairline fractures spreading like a windshield after a rock hits it. She looked to her left at her aide. He still wouldn't meet her eyes. Bad sign, very bad sign. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, and smiled that Louisiana smile again. That's round one, folks. If you're angry already, wait till you hear round two. Comment below. Should she resign? Should she be investigated? Let us know what you think. But don't go anywhere because we're just getting started. Kennedy stood up again, pushed his chair back, and walked around the committee table. The cameras tracked him. He was walking toward the gallery, toward the back of the room where the regular people sat. He stopped next to a man in row 8. Middle-aged, maybe 50. Dark skin, graying beard cut close to his face, wearing a suit that looked new. Sitting absolutely still, hands folded in his lap, watching Omar with an expression of exhaustion. Kennedy put a hand on the man's shoulder. Gentle, respectful. Folks, I want you to meet someone. This is Muhammad Hassan. The cameras found him immediately. Muhammad came to America from Somalia. Legal refugee. Came here the right way. Did everything by the book. Every form, every fee, every rule. Kennedy's hand stayed on Muhammad's shoulder. Muhammad, how long did it take you to bring your family here? Legally. Muhammad's voice was quiet, but clear. 12 years. 12 years, Kennedy repeated. Let it echo. Could you stand up for me, Muhammad? He stood tall, dignified. 12 years, Kennedy said again. I'm just a simple country lawyer, but that seems like a mighty long time. Tell us what that feels like. Muhammad looked at Omar. She wouldn't meet his eyes. When Muhammad spoke, his voice was stronger. I applied for asylum in 2007. I waited 3 years just for the first interview. I filled out so many forms. I paid fees, $15,000 total, every dollar legal. My family was still in Somalia, still in the refugee camp. My daughter... He stopped, swallowed hard. My daughter was 8 years old when I left. I missed her 9th birthday, her 10th, her 11th. I missed everything. When she turned 14, she stopped calling me Baba on the phone. She called me Muhammad, like I was a stranger. Someone in the gallery made a sound between a gasp and a sob. Muhammad's hands clenched. Year 9, another letter. System upgrade, everything lost, start over. Start over after 9 years. Kennedy remained standing. Muhammad, did you ever think about taking shortcuts? No. Why not? Because that's not who I am. I came to America for freedom, for law, for justice. You don't get justice by breaking the law. Even when the law is slow, you follow it. Because if you don't, what's the point? Why come here at all? The gallery erupted into applause. Kennedy sat down and leaned forward. Muhammad, when did you finally get your family here? 2019, 12 years and 4 months. My daughter was 20 years old. I missed her childhood. And where is your daughter now? She's here in the gallery. Every camera swiveled, finding her in row 9. Young woman, maybe 22. Tears streaming down her face. What's your name, sweetheart? Amina. You okay? She shook her head. No. When was the last time you saw your father before you came to America? I was 8. He came to say goodbye. I didn't understand. I thought he'd be back. He wasn't back for 12 years. Kennedy let that sit. Then he turned to Omar. Congresswoman, you lecture us constantly about immigration reform, about compassion. You've given dozens of speeches about how we need to fix the process. Omar's voice was defensive. Yes, and I stand by everything. Muhammad played by every rule. Kennedy's voice cut through hers. 12 years he didn't see his daughter because he believed in doing things the legal way. He picked up a paper. But your story is different, isn't it? Questions about your marriages, about immigration documents, about timelines that don't quite add up. Omar started to speak. Kennedy raised a hand. Not yet. Muhammad waited 12 years. Your path was considerably faster. Different circumstances, but still, the optics are unfortunate. Here's what makes people angry. Muhammad waited 12 years while you preach about compassion, yet you found creative solutions and benefited from it. Muhammad looked at Omar. I came to America believing in fairness. I shouldn't have had to wait 12 years while people who knew how to work the system got through in months. My daughter remembers me as the man on the phone. I can never get those years back. Amina started crying harder. Kennedy walked back to his seat. Congresswoman, did your path to citizenship take 12 years? Silence. Did you wait in refugee camps while paperwork processed? Silence. Did you follow every single rule exactly as written, no matter how difficult? Omar's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her aide whispered something urgent. She shook her head. That's what I thought. That's 2 scandals, folks. Betty's money, Muhammad's time. If you think that was bad, share this with every legal immigrant you know. He opened a 3rd folder. Let's talk about what you said about certain Americans, specifically Jewish Americans, and the teacher who paid the price for your words. Omar's face had gone truly pale. Her hands were shaking. Kennedy stood again and walked to row 12. Sarah Goldstein, a young woman in her late 20s, looked up, her eyes red and puffy. Sarah teaches history at Roosevelt High School in Minneapolis. 23 years of teaching kids about freedom and tolerance. Kennedy looked at Omar. But after the Congresswoman's comments about American Jews and money, Sarah needed police protection at her school. Sarah, can you stand up? Sarah stood slowly. Tell us what happened. Sarah's voice was a whisper. After she tweeted about the Benjamins, I went to school Monday morning. Someone had spray-painted a swastika on my classroom door in red paint. Underneath it said, "This is what Omar was talking about." The room sucked in its breath. 400 people inhaling simultaneously. The next day I got anonymous emails saying I was the kind of Jew the Congresswoman was talking about, that I was disloyal to America. I teach American history. My students started asking, Miss Goldstein, are you bought by Israel? 10th graders asking their teacher if she's a traitor. She looked directly at Omar. I had to take 3 months off for my safety and mental health. The school district paid for a security guard because someone in Congress decided to say that Jews control politics with money. Sarah's hands were rattling the microphone. And the worst part was my grandmother. She survived Auschwitz. She gave me her necklace when I started teaching, a Star of David she wore through the camps. I stopped wearing it for 3 months. I hid it in a drawer because I was afraid. Sarah collapsed into her seat. Kennedy stood silent, letting the horror sink in. Congresswoman, when you tweeted, "It's all about the Benjamins," did you consider that a high school teacher in your own state might face death threats? I was criticizing policy. Sarah Goldstein teaches algebra and history. What policy is she part of? Your supporters heard Jews and money, and they acted. You suggested an entire group is inherently disloyal. Kennedy leaned forward. Tell them you're sorry. Not sorry that. Not sorry if. Just sorry. Tell Sarah you're sorry her students called her a traitor. Omar's voice was barely working. I'm sorry. Sarah Goldstein stood up again. I don't believe you. I think you're sorry you got caught. I don't think you're sorry for what you said or what happened because of it. The room erupted into a standing ovation for the teacher. Kennedy sat back. That's 3 scandals. Betty's money, Mohammed's time, Sarah's safety. Share this everywhere. He opened the 4th folder. Let's talk about September 11th. Let's talk about 3,000 Americans and how you referred to them. Omar's aide whispered again. She shook her head violently. He stood up, gathered his things, and walked out, her own aide abandoning her on camera. Kennedy smiled. Looks like it's just you now. That's Captain Thomas Brady, retired FDNY, Ladder Company 15. A man in a firefighter's dress uniform stood at attention. Captain Brady responded to the World Trade Center on September 11th. He lost 16 men that day, including his brother. Captain, what do you think about her describing the attacks as, "Some people did something"? Captain Brady's voice was gravelly. My brother was 53 years old. He died when the North Tower collapsed. They found his body 3 weeks later under 60 feet of concrete. Some people did something? Like it was a parking violation? He pointed at Omar. Terrorists murdered 3,000 Americans. My brother wasn't some people. He had a name, Thomas Brady Sr. Kennedy asked, Do you stand by those words, yes or no? Omar's mouth opened and closed. Finally, no, I don't stand by those words. Captain Brady stood at attention. My father's name was Thomas Brady Sr. Remember that name. Don't let him be some people. The congresswoman from Minnesota can go to hell. The room exploded into rolling thunder. Omar sat alone, crying. Kennedy opened the final folder. One more. Capitalism, socialism, and the small business owner you destroyed. He walked to row 15. James Morrison, a man whose jacket was too big, looked defeated. James owned a hardware store in Minneapolis. 30 years. Morrison's Hardware. James spoke tiredly. She held a rally 2 blocks from my store about income inequality and taxing the rich. After that, people stood outside with signs saying, I exploit workers. I netted $60,000 a year for 70 hours of work. They smashed my windows 3 times. Then 20 of them came inside, broke $8,000 in inventory, shouting this was the revolution. My employees quit because they were scared. I had to close. 3 generations of work gone. Kennedy looked at Omar. James made $60,000. How much did you make? $300,000 base salary plus book deals, well over $500,000. You preach socialism while getting rich off capitalism. You fly first class while your victims take Spirit Airlines. James is staying at a Motel 6. You're at the Watergate. James stopped in front of Omar and set a small metal object on the table. That's the key to my store. Bank owns it now. You keep that. Remember what your words cost. Kennedy let the silence stretch for a full minute. That's 5 scandals. Betty's money, Mohammed's time, Sarah's safety, Captain Brady's father's memory, James's livelihood. All gone. Because of you. He sat down. I have no further questions. The room erupted, louder than all previous times combined. Justice had happened. Kennedy walked out. The video went viral, 47 million views in 24 hours. Omar's office crashed. 3 major donors cut ties. Her campaign manager resigned via Twitter. Within 48 hours, she'd lost half her staff. A primary challenger announced his campaign 3 days later, standing in front of James's closed store. He raised $1.2 million in one day. Polling showed her trailing by 19 points. Betty Henderson became a folk hero. Mohammed Hassan had a bill named after him. Sarah Goldstein became a national spokesperson. James Morrison's store reopened as Kennedy's Hardware after a GoFundMe raised $180,000. Omar didn't resign, but she became a ghost in Congress. In the primary, she lost badly, 34% to 61%. Her career ended with a whimper and a Louisiana lesson. Kennedy's national approval hit 71%. The lesson was simple. Accountability isn't complicated. It just takes someone brave enough to ask.